Hi guys, Brees here, and welcome to your introduction to the Unity editor. So without further ado, let's jump straight in and have a look at the home for the course, the home we're going to be taking for the course. So let's jump into our Unity editor, and this is what you'll be confronted with in an existing game. So this is an existing game, and we have something on the screen already. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and this can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming if you're not used to it. So let's break it down and let's look at the key elements of the editor so that you feel a little bit more comfortable having a look at your games. So firstly, I want you to notice the very top of the window has three different things. It has three different things separated by dashes. Now the first thing is the scene you're in. So a game can have multiple scenes, multiple dungeons, multiple rooms, those kind of things, and you can break those down into scenes in Unity, and the first thing you can see in the top window, the window title, is the scene itself. And then secondly is the name of the game. So this game is called Laser Defender. That's the game we're currently editing and currently working on. So by looking at the top of your window, you'll know immediately which game you're working on and what scene you're working on in that game. And finally, PC, Mac, Linux, that's just what you're going to be building the game against. So we're currently building a PC, Mac, and Linux game. Now, the first thing we want to do when we hit the game is to play it. We want to try and see what it does and how we can have a look at the game. And we can do that by just simply pressing the play button at the top center of our screen. So if we press the play button, we shall see that the game comes up in the game window. So we have a game pane, and the game pane turns up with the game in it. So that's the first thing we can do. Now, if your editor, for any reason, doesn't quite look like that, if it looks like something else, you can always go at the top right of your Unity window and go to reset it to default. You'll have a bunch of different options. You have 2x3, 4 split, default, tall and wide that are already baked in. And those are just different views and different layouts of the editor to design your game. So you already have a bunch of default layers. Some of them are better for one monitor, some of them are better for two monitors, and you can play around with that. And the point is, if you ever no longer find your way around the editor and you're not sure where you are and how everything is positioned, you can always go back to reset your layout to default. So that's what you can do. Now, next is we've played the game, but right now it's only a small pane. We want to be able to see the game in its glory. It's like cover most of the screen. So if we click on the game pane, so you'll notice there's in the center top, there's a scene and a game pane. So if we click on the game pane, and there's a button on the right top of the game pane called Maximize on Play. If we click that and play it again, you'll see that the game will take a majority of the real estate on the screen. So you'll get a face full of game, and it's a lot easier to see what you're doing in the game itself when you maximize on play. Now you can remove maximize on play by just clicking it again. Now you have a game and a scene tab, and the difference between the two is the game tab is what your player is going to see, and the scene tab is what is actually in your game. And you can see they look radically different for us, the scene tab and the game tab. And that's just because we've put in a bunch of objects in our scene that are not necessarily visible to the player. So that's the scene tab, that's the thing you're going to be editing and working in, and the game tab is what you're going to be previewing the game in. Now you'll note something is, when I press play, I don't know whether many of you have noticed it, but the entire editor goes a little bit darker. And the reason for that is called the play mode tint. And the reason we have a play mode tint is whenever we've got a game playing, changes we make to the game are not persistent. They're not going to persist beyond a single play session. So if I started modifying my game now, which I could do, I could go into my scene, modify things around, let's say select an object and move it around, that's not going to persist beyond my play session. So when I stop playing again, all my changes have been reverted back. So in order to show us that, we're going to use a play mode tint. So right now it's very light gray. What we're actually going to do is go into File, or rather Unity, Preferences. In Windows it might be somewhere else. Have a dig through your menus to find the Preferences or Options menu, and you go to your Preferences, and you'll go to Colors and find the play mode tint. And here you want to find a color that's going to be disgusting enough and noticeable enough that you really can't miss it. So let's try this pale green, play the game, and now you can definitely see that the editor is in play mode. And when it's in play mode, changes will not be persisted. So that's really useful to note, because otherwise you can often make mistakes and not be quite sure why your changes have been lost, when in fact it's just because you made them in play mode. So now let's get started with creating our first project. So let's go to File, go to New Project, and I want you to do that in your editor too, actually, if you can follow along now. Instead of just having a look at a project we've already made, you're going to create a new project too. Now we're going to call this project something like Number Wizard, in preparation for the next section, Number Wizard, and we're going to select a default for 2D. So you'll notice there's a drop down. You can choose between 3D and 2D. You want to choose 2D for Number Wizard, and then let's click Create Project. And here we go. Now we're back in our brand new project for Number Wizard. So now let's create a new scene. You'll see at the very top of your window there's Untitled. That's because you're not currently in a scene. So to create a new scene, what we're going to do is we're going to go to File and then Save Scene. It'll come up with a name. We're going to call our scene Game with a capital G. So Game Scene, and you'll see something appears in the Asset folder in the project pane. So you've got the project pane at the bottom, and you've got the Asset folder, and Game appears in the Asset folder. Now the next thing I want you to see is how to move panes around. So you can click on a pane and you can move it around, and it'll snap intelligently to different areas of your screen. So you can also detach it. This is now in detach mode, and reattach it. This is now in reattach mode. I want you to grab the console, which is the thing I'm currently moving, from the bottom left pane to be on the right hand side pane. So add the console to your right hand side. This is the layout we want you to use for the next section of the course. Right, so next bit is the modes, and just to give you a short introduction to the modes, you have a bunch of buttons at the top left hand side of your editor, and they do different things and let you do different things inside the game space. So in particular, the first mode will let you move things around, or move the entire game space around, whereas the second mode will actually let you move objects around it instead. So the first mode moves the entire area, the entire scene. The second mode moves individual objects. Third mode rotates. Fourth mode scales, and the fifth one is for UI elements, so the user interface. And that is basically it. You can also switch those modes by Q, W, E, R, and T by using your keyboard. And that's basically it for our introduction to Unity. I hope you'll find it useful, and I hope it wasn't too overwhelming. We'll go through it step by step, and you'll learn a lot more about all the things that you can do with Unity in future lectures. So see you then, and bye for now.